Hello, and welcome to the How I Tested That podcast. I'm your host, David J. Bland. I'm an author and advisor, and I'm fascinated with testing early stage ideas. I've helped companies all around the world, and in this podcast, I connect with entrepreneurs and innovators who had the courage to test their ideas with real people in the market, with sometimes surprising results. Please join us as we explore the ups and downs of experimentation together. Today's guest is Eddy Connors. He's the co-founder and CEO of Goodie Bag. Goodie Bag is a marketplace solution for surplus food. They connect customers to local shops who have perfectly good yet unsold food at a discounted price for pickup. I really enjoyed this conversation with Eddy. He's a super down-to-earth guy who understands the impact of capitalism on a global ecosystem. His goal is to reduce food waste and provide more affordable options for quality food. And he does this by testing out solutions to problems that are right in front of him in his local community. Welcome to the podcast, Eddy.
Appreciate it, David. Excited to be here.
Yeah, we were connected through Ryan Martins, who I've always been a huge fan of. You know, he and I align a lot on this idea of being agile and iterating through stuff, but also incorporating sustainability. So we're not just focused on profit. And he was like, you got to check out what Eddy is doing with Goodie Bag. And so I started checking out what you're doing, and I thought it was amazing. And I'm so glad you were able to kind of make time and share your story here on the podcast with us.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm excited Ryan was able to connect us. Had the pleasure of crossing paths with him, given that we're kind of the product of CU Boulder. And so he's heavily involved in the entrepreneurial scene there and has ties with the university. And so, yeah, he's been a good advisor to myself too along this journey, obviously seeing a lot himself as a founder. Yeah,
I love Boulder area. It's so beautiful out there. I always try to find an excuse to come through Boulder if I have client work or something like that. So how about you give folks a little bit of background just on you and what kind of led up to you co-founding Goodie Bag?
Yeah, happy to. Let's see. Well, what's relevant to this conversation maybe is I'm a two-time founder, born and raised Westchester County, New York. So for any New Yorkers out there, you know that region, suburbs outside the city. I grew up in a 1 square mile town called Bronxville. And so for me, it was evident around age 17, coming out of high school, that didn't want to go the wealth management path, which is kind of common for that area of the States. And so I ended up taking a gap year, backpacking throughout Indonesia for a couple months, living with families, and got the bug, you could say, or the realization that entrepreneurship was an incredible way to create in this world. And so that's what I wanted to do. Coming back to the States, while I was in Indonesia, I kind of had this juxtaposition of experiences. On one hand, the most beautiful places I've been fortunate enough to experience, being in the jungles, rainforests, beaches, really pristine, biodiverse geographies. And then while I was there, I was also exposed to some of the pervasive plastic pollution and seeing how and learning more about how that's a product of foreign industry. And while we were there, we would learn about the palm oil industry and the pressures and incentives around palm oil production as one of the major exports of Indonesia, and how that's creating monocrop culture and deforesting a lot of areas. And so it was an awesome way to kind of have that hands-on exposure of like how we act and behave as consumers does manifest in reality. Sometimes it's not right in front of us. It might be in a monocrop plantation in Indonesia, but it does have an effect on how our world functions and what we invest and divest in. And so it was an awesome experience. Definitely was really curious around understanding the systemic reasons why we're degrading the planet in particular. And so coming back to the States, I started my first company doing a sustainable athleisure wear brand. The idea was I would make athletic shorts from recycled ocean plastic and then ethically manufacture in Indonesia. And so did that kind of 0 to 1. Company was called Berbeda, so an Indonesian word for be different, kind of like that mantra and ethos in general of like, hey, the way we've been doing things hasn't really created the best outcomes for all, including the planet. And I think what excites me about being an entrepreneur in today's age is there's this understanding and excitement around, hey, how can we use business for good? How can we use it to actually take into consideration the impact it has on all stakeholders, customers, suppliers, producers, and the environment, you know? And so that led me to study strategy and entrepreneurship formally, if you will, at the Lead School of Business of CU Boulder. And right on with that, Boulder's just a beautiful spot in the country. And so I was seeking something that was a little more conducive to an active outdoor lifestyle. And Boulder definitely has that. Plus, the business school was emphasizing entrepreneurship and innovation. And so it seemed like a good fit for me. And so, yeah, I was there in 2019 as a freshman, graduated 2.5 years later out of the business school, and shortly after started on this journey with Goodie Bag.
That's an incredible journey on how your gap year impacted your worldview and then coming back and trying to create something that has an impact. I almost think that we should teach more systems thinking in school to understand beyond our consumer behavior. How does that impact other things, besides just paying for a thing? And I keep thinking systems thinking is going to come back and be popular, maybe in a different form. But I do think just having that awareness of having traveled a bit myself, I did some work in Sri Lanka and just seeing how what we do here in the States does have ripple effects and does impact other people's lives, I think is super important. And so you had this kind of winding journey, which a lot of entrepreneurs do. And what was sort of the defining moment, or I'm not saying there's like a brilliant idea and then you just willed it into being, because I don't think that's how it happens for most of us. But what was the need that you started to stumble on kind of coming out of school that was sort of the idea behind Goodie Bag? And maybe you can explain a little bit what Goodie Bag is to the folks that are listening.
Yeah, for sure, David. And 100%, I think my journey with Goodie Bag is demystifying kind of that romanticism of you have this thought that comes to you late at night, and from there on out, you knew that's what you were going to spend. And so that's not how it happened, but it definitely did stem from a deep understanding, I'd say, that entrepreneurship was the path I wanted to pursue. And so that, I think, is the framework at which I go through or went through school with that lens, of understanding, hey, how can I aggregate skills and network and understandings that will allow me to create positive value in a way that can be monetized as a business. So a couple different thoughts there, but before we get in that, I think, maybe starting with what Goodie Bag is. So we're a digital marketplace that connects consumers to local retail shops like restaurants and bakeries. Any perfectly good unsold food they have, they can list on our platform at a discounted price for pickup. And so ultimately, it's a way to ensure that quality food doesn't go to waste and consumers get much more affordable options on quality local food. And then to the retail shops, these local business owners, they're able to salvage revenue on what would have been a sunk cost and reach new customers in the process. And then obviously the outcome is keeping food out of the landfill as a result.
Yeah. So were you witnessing this issue sort of around Boulder, or what was sort of the driving factor behind that?
Yeah, it's interesting. But Boulder is an interesting place because it's one of the most affluent areas in the country. There's a lot of wealth, but it's also a college town. So this majority of the population are students. And it's incredibly expensive to live there. And so a lot of people on a daily basis, including myself as a undergrad college student, are looking for good food, but don't want to spend $20-$25 on every single meal you get. And so that was kind of the reality that not only students, but most Americans face today. So for us, David, it was actually the impetus was entering this startup summer program hosted by CU Boulder. It was out of their Silicon Flatirons department. Major shout out to the people who run that program, Brad Bernthal and Sarah. Just an incredible opportunity for students, alumni, grad students to ideate in a low pressure, no pressure environment, essentially, over the course of 10 weeks and get some mentorship and feedback cycles, which I know is something you're interested in, to get through the process of ideation and validation. And so my former college roommate and I went into that program with a couple different ideas rooted in a fundamental belief that the major systems today, they need sustainable disruption. So whether you want to look at, obviously, food and ag is what we're in, but you can throw a dart at the capitalistic wheel, and wherever it lands, more likely than not, there's a need to create a more sustainable system in that industry. And so for us, it was kind of looking at where the most urgent need was and how our experience could lend us unique value or a unique opportunity to deliver that value, if you will. And so looking at food, I mean, I've worked in restaurants. My roommate has worked in restaurants. And so we've seen it firsthand, right? I was the type of guy on staff who take a plate back to the kitchen. The dude had 2 bites out of this filet mignon. I have no qualms eating that in the corner, right? Like legally probably can't do that, but that's who I was, and it's who I am. Like you see good food, it's like, why would you throw that out? There's no reason to throw that out. And so that was kind of ingrained just, I would say, from a growing up standpoint. But then becoming more aware of the business opportunity happened in that program where we recognized that 42 billion pounds of food are being wasted every year by retail shops alone, just in the United States. And it's equating to $162 billion of economic loss. And so not only is that a glaring, like, hey, this is screaming inefficiency and it's hurting our economy. And a lot of the people who get hurt are these local business owners. But then it's also a missed opportunity to feed the 85% of Americans that are looking for deals and discounts on food. And then the environmental element of food waste contributing to greenhouse gas emissions as they rot in landfills. And then also learning about how not only are you wasting that end product when you throw out a prepared food item, and as it sits in landfill, it emits greenhouse gas emissions, but it's also what went into creating that finished product. And a stat that stuck out to me, David, was 25% of our fresh water is used to produce food that doesn't get eaten. And so it's just a huge, and then back to your systems thinking, it's like that, I think, is the responsibility that this next wave of business leaders need to assume. They need to understand, and this is, I'm including myself in this active, ongoing learning process of what is the full impact of my business operations and the way we're currently doing things today. And so it was just a really obvious kind of like 2 birds, 1 stone, or if you include the environmental, 3 birds, 1 stone. And then we went into validation mode. So we started talking to local business owners. Hey, do you experience surplus? Why do you experience surplus? What do you do with it? What's going on? And so we just didn't have any assumptions around like, oh no, businesses do this when they have surplus and so it's already handled, or it's past its ability to be sold and so there's no way to make use of it. And so once we kind of recognized that wicked issue of food waste and food affordability and we were locked in on that, we went into startup mode. Yeah.
That's incredible. We recently had Mark Wandler on from Sustainable. He do like upcycled barley. And I was really amazed at his story about, we just assumed that the craft breweries, when they have the spent barley from brewing, they would just give it to farmers. And in reality, either the farmers maybe didn't pick it up on time, or the fines were so much money that it was almost less expensive just to have waste management come and get it. And so while they wanted to give it to farms, like the logistics of it just weren't happening. And so I think just going in and talking to retailers and business owners and having them talk openly about what they're experiencing, I think you can learn so much versus, like you said, jumping ahead and saying, oh no, I'm sure they already take care of that. Let's move on to some other problem. And when you dig in, you realize, oh wait, they're actually really struggling with this. So what kind of businesses were you speaking to? Did you just kind of go up and knock on the door? Like, how did that go?
Yeah, so definitely walking in, knocking. Hey, recent CU Boulder grad. Would love to hear your thoughts on some problems we're working through. Do you have a minute? Do you mind if I shoot you right now? And so the restaurant industry is chaotic. So our discovery probably looks different if you're doing enterprise SaaS discovery or whatever it's going to look different, but premise is the same. Yeah. Hey, I'm here to learn, curious how you approach this. And what was huge for us was my co-founder, Luke, former college roommate. He used to work at a local pizzeria in Boulder called Barchetta. And the owner is an awesome dude, really nice, genuine guy who loves pizza and loves creating a welcoming experience for his customers and is open-minded. And so it was an awesome guinea pig for us because they experienced surplus pizza. So they would pre-make some pizzas, which is pretty common for pizzerias that do by the slice. And so you walk in, you have an array of pizza slices already made that you can get heated up. And that inherently, you're guessing what the foot traffic demand is going to be that day. And so it creates an inherent surplus outcome. So that was an awesome opportunity to actually have a patient first customer, if you will, where it's like, hey, like, can we try to sell your surplus pizza to people at a discounted price? Like, would you be open to that? And so he was, and that's really how we got off the ground. We did our in-person marketing to get a couple hundred people on the wait list, just handing out flyers, going to relevant events. We did heavily lean into the university ecosystem for that first couple hundred. But then we sat in on our first payment. So 3 months after we won that startup summer program, which again, super lightweight, just like pitch competition, we got like $2,000 to go forward, right? Nothing major. But what was most important is we got conviction on the problem and the opportunity. So through that process, we recognized, yes, this is a clear problem. Yes, there's a viable business opportunity here to pursue. And so next 10 months, we're out of his parents' basement, right? Just hustling away. But within 3 months, we got our MVP up. And so we had this pizzeria indicate, hey, I have a goodie bag that's going to be $6 for you to purchase, but it's going to contain product that would have been around $18 in store. And we sent text messages to the couple hundred people on our wait list with a link to pay through our web app. And sure enough, someone paid for it. We're sitting in the shop. It's a pickup model. So you say, hey, come get it before 8 p.m. A young mom walks in with 2 kids, picks up their goodie bag, and goes on with her day. And so it was a cool experience. See that first customer come in and like see kind of that hard work of handing out flyers and all that initial build. It was an incredibly janky platform by any standard, but it got us our first sale. And so that was the grind continued since then.
I like that you're scrappy. I like that you found somebody willing to take a chance on what you're providing. And I think sometimes we talk ourselves out of things, right? We say, oh, no one's going to agree to this. And no, not everyone will agree, but there's usually this small group, I think in business, we often call them like early adopters, where they have the problem, they're aware of it, and then they're actively seeking a solution to the problem. And when you come in, they're like, hey, as long as you don't irritate my customers and lose business for me, like this is a win. And I know it can be janky and it won't be perfect, but I'm willing to take a chance with you on this because I see the upside. And they're never going to be the majority of your customers, but you have to start somewhere. And getting traction with those is really big because then that gives you some learning, and then you can go off from there and find other people who maybe don't fit that exact profile, but you do have some stories behind you now and some experience. And so I'm just guessing you just had like a landing page with maybe just some sort of payment processor mashed up together. And then you, I guess, have some kind of notification coming back from the pizza place that they picked it up, or how did that work?
Yeah. So we did a PWA, a progressive web app, essentially a website wrapped into something you can add to your home screen. So part of those initial waitlisters was educating them on how to add a website to your home screen. So it looks like an app, but we didn't have the money to actually build a native app. So that was an interesting part of the journey. But yeah, so it was super simple. You could see the shop thumbnail. So when Barchetta themselves had a web accessible interface, so just a website, and then they could indicate, hey, I have a goodie bag. I have 2 of them. Come pick it up during this time. And as soon as they listed, then we would send a text message to the people who were on our wait list, or after that first one, then who were just on our web app, if you will. And then they could go into the web app and then follow a kind of add to cart flow. And then we integrated with Stripe early on to handle payments. And then, we sold out the majority of our bags even from the get-go. And so it was kind of obviously exciting to see that happen, but enough so where like the operation was, as the partner, was just like package it, treat it like a to-go order. And then when the customer comes in, just verify their name or code and treat it like any other kind of to-go order.
I see. So it's something they embed on their existing site of, look, hey, we got this special offer. And then they use kind of your setup for that. From a viability point of view, are you taking a percentage of that, or what does that look like from your side?
Yeah. So we kept the platform, and we still do today, completely free for our partners to join. So any local business owner can join Goodie Bag for free, monthly cost to stay on our platform or minimums. And then our revenue model is a take rate. So we'll take a third of what the customer pays and then eat the transaction cost as well from our cut. So in that example, Barchetta was selling their bags for $6. Customer pays $6 plus tax, no hidden fees or anything like that. And then we would collect $2. Barchetta would salvage $4, and we would get $2 minus the transaction fee.
Wow, that's very generous. Yeah, but I mean, small business owners are notoriously hard to upsell on things. I mean, They're busy. They're running their like small mom and pop shop. And so it's really hard to come in with a high-end premium solution pricing anyway. Okay, so you have this set up. You're getting orders beyond pizza. Like, who signs up for this? Like, where did you see sort of this pull from? Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. So it lends itself to the pre-made category space, right? So you can think bakeries, bagel shops, donut shops. We had a local grocer join who was doing like pre-made meal kits. So you walk into a grocer or to a cafe and you have these pre-made sandwiches or pre-made meal kits. Those inherently they're perishable. So they have a shelf life, if you will, or a sell by or best by date. And yeah, so those kind of categories where it's either pre-made product. And then we also started going into the fast casual area, where if you think of any place where you walk in and there's kind of hot food available for you to just add to a plate, Chipotle kind of popularized this fast casual space. They also have windows at which they're trying to cycle through inventory on a daily basis. So, and then this was kind of the discovery, which was kind of interesting around like once pizza's made, like you have 4 hours to sell it, or you either have to keep it below a certain temperature or above a certain temperature. And so there's kind of these general guidelines for how these restaurants and retail shops need to operate within. And then we're then creating an instant kind of liquidity insurance, if you will, for their operational cycles. And so since we're a pickup only model, like these shops have the control to determine when the customer comes. So they can choose like an hour window of like, if I know I need to sell this by 3, I'm going to say, come get it between 2 and 3. And so that's kind of how we eventually started identifying more use cases across this food sector. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very insightful. So they can control that window. They can almost control, well, so much of it, right? And so you don't get a situation where people are showing up at a wrong time and then they're not able to consume what they're purchasing. So there's some element of just like right time, right action here of we give them the flexibility. They can host this on their site. They don't lose money. They're not throwing stuff away, and they can have a lot of control over it. So I guess going from pizza to prepackaged things, like where do you see the pull from? Like where are you testing your way through at present time?
Yeah. So I think kind of even just bringing back your thought around how important it is to have some early customers be partners rather than customers. You know, people who are invested in helping you discover or endeavor on this journey. And so that's been critical for us because time and time again, we've just come back to asking the questions of what are your needs? So it's been a rather natural progression based on us just walking into as many food establishments as possible and just asking them what they currently experience. So we'd ask targeted questions related to surplus. What do you throw out? When do you throw it out? Why do you throw that out? And so we would just start to understand like different types of shops surplus needs. And that was just a natural discovery kind of just through a lot of conversations. But then we did take the step back too, and just instead of putting the why and what are your needs within the frame of surplus, what was a big learning and I would say investment that we've taken as on this journey as founders is how to add the most value to our customer. So if we look at the partner, the business owner, it's outside of the confines of connecting this surplus product to a customer. Like, what are you truly hoping to get from this transaction? Or what are your needs that you may even think are unrelated to this transaction that we can potentially help address either through additional services or products, or at least be aware of to understand how our product is either contributing to this issue you're experiencing or mitigating or has a neutral effect. And so that has really opened up our eyes, David, to the need for local business owners to be supported. They struggle to compete in market. And so the greater kind of opportunity, I'd say, and learning that we've had on this journey is that local business owners depend on local consumers choosing them over national brands. they depend on their dollars being spent locally. And there's only a finite amount of ways to incentivize, encourage, and foster local dollars being spent locally. And now we're uncovering how we can create better create that outcome beyond just our initial idea that we had around, you have a product, we have a customer, we'll help you get that product to a customer. And so that you don't have to waste money and food, you can get some money back. And so now it's going beyond that. It's like, how can we be your support system to thrive as a local business owner? And how can we use our community that we've built, which is also just such a cool aspect of being a marketplace company, is at the end of the day, you're a community. And so now that we've built this community of local consumers and local business owners bonded together by saving food and money, how can we elevate this community to provide more value to our partners and our customers? How can we make this a more valuable experience to everybody involved? And so that's that iterative. And then what's the next step is, okay, wow, there's a lot we can do. How do we prioritize it? And so that's kind of the journey we're at now, David. We went through the Techstars Farm to Fork Accelerator, awesome in-person 3-month program, iterated a lot on the strategy, released a scalable mobile application, and launched a couple more cities after getting out of Techstars. We launched Denver in November and Charlotte in February. And so had a good amount of growth, going through our pre-seed right now, have product market fit with this surplus offering. We know that there's a need to some level that's shared across this pre-made retail segment, and that there's a really high desire amongst consumers for this product. But there's a whole additional host of needs that are shared between our partners and our customers. And our job is to not drop the ball with the surplus offering, what we've entered market with, and then iterate as quickly as we can on the additional needs that would give more value to our community. And so that's kind of that game, that balancing act, I would say, that we're experiencing on a daily basis.
Yeah, getting traction with what you have. And then it's so hard because, well, in hindsight, it'll look obvious of what you should have chosen. But in the moment, it's not always so obvious what you should do. And so we always look at like the jobs, pains, and gains of the customer. You have a marketplace, right? So you're looking at small business owners, retailers, prepackaged things, but other issues they have. And then you're looking at your community. And it's almost like you have to do discovery on both sides, right? You have to do the discovery on your community and then also discovery on the other side with your business owners. And then try to make these connections of, okay, is there shared value here that we can solve, but not go too far away from our core of what we're good at and end up stretching ourselves too thin, where it's almost as if instead of doing something really well, that's a very specific thing, we do lots of little things, but none of them really that well. And that's how, as an entrepreneur, you can just spend. You can stay busy all day and then you're wondering, did I make progress in any specific direction?
Exactly. Yeah.
But it sounds like your journey, finding this fit with this issue and then hearing related issues and being able to prioritize that, it's a fun spot to be in, as long as you have some kind of clarity as this is our vision and do these things align to our vision and do we have the capabilities? One of the things we often do, and I've collaborated with Techstars a bit in the past, but this idea of desirable, viable, feasible, I keep saying that time and time again of like, is there some sort of need, right? Is there a risk around that? Is there some sort of risk around viability? Like, is this something that's going to be profitable and sustainable? And then is there a risk around feasibility, which is our ability to actually do the thing? And quite often, we spend way too much time on the can we do the thing, and we overlook, okay, is the problem really there? And then will people pay enough, and can we keep costs low enough? And it feels as if you're going about it a very smart way of, hey, let's stay really connected to our customers, treat them as partners. Let's almost do this co-creation thing where they're willing to try things that maybe aren't fully robust yet, but it'll solve their problem enough for the time being. And then if we see how that goes, we can back our way into maybe something bigger. Or if it doesn't work, maybe we just say, look, that didn't work, and let's move on to something else that might be more pressing. But I feel as if you have a really smart approach to this with keeping your customers so close and almost co-creating with them.
I love it. Yeah.
So you're on this journey, you're looking to expand into other cities, like some of that's in flight now. How do people get in touch with you if this is really resonating with them, or they want to invest, or they're like, hey, you should come to my city, or I'm a small business owner? Like, how should people get in contact with you, and what's the best way for them to reach out?
Yeah, appreciate it, David. It's been really cool to see how much we are community-led growth. And so, for anyone interested in getting involved either as a consumer, as a partner, or an investor, we are raising our pre-seed round currently that we're looking to close in a couple weeks. So that's definitely an exciting time for us. Feel free to hit us up directly on Instagram. That's where we're most responsive as a company. And so our Instagram handle is goodiebag.eats. And then me personally, I'm not the biggest social media connoisseur, but I am really responsive on LinkedIn. And so I'm just Eddy Connors on LinkedIn. Feel free to just connect, and I'm always looking to chat. Yeah.
Awesome. We'll have all those links on the detail page. So if you're all looking to reach out, you can get a hold of Eddy, reach out to Goodie Bag. I want to thank you so much for spending time with us today, going through the amazing journey of taking your gap year and getting inspired by our consumerism and how it impacts other parts of the world, to come back and go through your program and really start something that's rooted in a meaningful problem that people are experiencing. It's so refreshing to hear entrepreneurs focused on things of that nature. I just want to thank you so much for joining and sharing your story with us today, Eddy.
It's been my pleasure, David. Yeah, let's eat local, save food, save money, create the communities we want to see.
Thank you for listening to another episode of How I Tested That, where we share stories about experimentation, tips, and tricks. If you learned something new, please recommend us to a friend or colleague. And remember, keep testing your ideas.